Hi guys, welcome to part 2 of this Serum overview. And in this section, we're just going to be going over the layout of Serum, just so you're more familiar with all of the different sections, the different pages, so it all makes more sense in subsequent videos. So going from the top left over, you'll first see the Serum logo. It's a pretty self-explanatory one. And then next you'll see these 4 different tabs. And by default, when you open up Serum, you'll be on the Oscillator tab. Now the Oscillator tab is just this top gray part right here with the sub oscillator, the noise oscillator, your 2 main oscillators that you'll load wavetables into, as well as the main filter module. And then moving over one, if you click on this is your effects slot. You'll notice that when I clicked on the effects slot, this didn't change. You'll still see the keyboard, you'll still see your envelopes, your LFOs, and all your modulators. So that will be consistent on all 4 tabs inside of Serum. So again, going back to the effects, you are given 10 different effects, and we will cover each of these in more depth later in the tutorial course. Next is your mod matrix. So one of the cool things about Serum is that if you are a guy like myself who drifts towards the modulation style in a synth like Native Instruments Massive, where you drag and drop in the actual synth to do your modulators, you're going to feel at home in Serum. You're going to feel at home staying in your oscillator tab, doing most of the modulation from here. If you're a person who loves Sylenth, where you're used to working in a modulation matrix, you have that option afforded to you. Now, I will concede that there are times when I will use the modulation matrix because it can do things that the drag and drop modulators cannot. But here is where you can set up all your modulation matrix. And when you activate a mod source, which I'll do really quick, just to show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to add envelope 1 to the wavetail position of my first oscillator. And when you go to your matrix, that will be there. So it'll show you what's going on. So these are linked to each other. So it's very, very intuitive, very, very easy to use, and actually very nice. Then finally, you are given the global page. Now this is the page where you can set a bunch of, obviously your preferences, your audio preferences, and there's actually a bunch of sound design tools on this page that we'll cover later in this course because we have to cover, I can't start talking about the unison range, the unison engine until I start actually talking about where the unison is coming from, which is, the oscillators and all that. So we will cover the global tab in depth later in the tutorial course. But this is generally where you're going to set up your oscillator settings, your unison settings, and even these cool chaos knobs, which we'll talk about. So then going further over to the right, you'll see this section of the synth, which is where you're going to toggle in between presets and just your general menu. So this little floppy disk looking guy, and I think it's still funny we use a floppy disk to denote saving, but I digress. So this is where you will save your patches, and they'll save by default to a user folder. And then moving over, this is where you can load all of your presets. So you can load the stock presets and then arrow between them. Right. And then down here, it's kind of cool. It'll say, it might be a little cool tidbit about the sound or what type of sound it's meant for. Like this says little drop sound. Right. And it'll say who made the sound. And then you'll be further to the right, you'll see the menu. Now the menu is pretty cool because it houses the manual. So if you ever need to look anything up, you can just click and it will load the manual straight off the bat. And then you can load presets. You can initialize presets. So right now, let's say I want to go back to the initial preset. There we are. We can revert to save. Now that's a cool feature. So let's load up a lead again. Okay, so I changed some of the wavetables and the noise, and I'm going to show you what this does. If you go to revert to save, it brings it back to how the preset was saved. So that's helpful if you start to tweak or edit a preset, or you start to make your own or whatever, and you kind of are like, oh crap, I don't want to, you might save it, and then you start making some tweaks, and you want to go back to the actual save version. That is how you can do it quickly and easily. And then you're given copy oscillator A to B, which is nice if you're drawing in custom waveforms or you spend a lot of time fine-tuning something in oscillator A and you don't want to actually just physically by hand do it all over again. And then you can show your Serum presets folder. This would be the folder where you're going to see basically the hierarchy of all the added elements of Serum. You get the LFO shapes, the noises, the presets, you have the manual, of course, the system, and then you even have the tables. So if you want to import or load your own third-party tables, or for instance, I downloaded the Electra X-Wave tables offline from an audio forum. This is where you would place those to get them to pop up inside of Serum, as well as if you get any third-party presets, this is where you could drag the folder from your desktop or wherever it may be on your computer into these folders. So going to below the Show Serum Presets folder, you have the Hide Piano Keyboard for those of you who want a more condensed view inside of Serum. But in this tutorial course, I'm going to have it open so you can see the notes that I'll be playing and things like that. And then you have Load MIDI Map, Save MIDI Map, Load Tuning, which are pretty self-explanatory. So that sums up the layout overview of this part of the tutorial course. I will see you in the next video in part 3.